Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. After temporarily removing the president of the country, Dilma Rousseff, in Brazil, Brazilian lawmakers swore in a new president in spite of the huge protests against the measure just outside. Let's have a look. Shortly after his swearing in, the new president, Michel Temer, had this to say. The first words to the Brazilian people is the word trust, he said. Trust in the values that form the character of our people, in the vitality of our democracy. Trust in the recuperation of the country's economy. And within hours of becoming president, Michel Temer was undoing the 12.5 years of the Lula-Dilma reign that brought so much social and economic protection and relief to Brazilians who were struggling to maintain a subsistence. Temer reduced his ministries from 32 to 23. At first glance, this may sound like a good idea, but the smaller governments usually means less services and less government programs for those who are in need. Joining us now from Coimbra, Portugal, is Boaventura de Sousa Santos. He's professor of economics at the University of Coimbra. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you.
So, Professor, let me begin with asking you, who is the new president, Michel Temer?
Well, Michel Temer, in fact, is not eligible for president. He has been suspended of his political rights in São Paulo for having accepted a donation for his campaign above the limit for the next 8 years. So if you'd be put to a vote, he probably would not be eligible. So that's the first irony of this bizarre situation we have now in Brazil. Michel Temer is also investigated in several cases of corruption, and therefore is the least, adequate person to change politics in Brazil, the least legitimate, I would say, both his personality, his party, his attitude. In fact, many people think that he should have resigned or be suspended like the president, because it's an impeachment process should also involve the vice president, given the fact that some of the laws were signed by him, the laws that apparently are causing the impeachment, the budgetary type of manipulations, which, of course, are not crimes of responsibility.
Now, I understand there were huge protests going on outside of the palace while he was being inaugurated. And there's been, throughout this weekend, a number of protests held across Brazil. What are the numbers and what is the level of protest going on? Because, again, I want to remind people that in a recent poll, only 2% of Brazilians said that they would vote for Temer. So I can see what the unrest might be all about. Can you tell us more about the size of the protests you've observed and whether they're going to be heard?
Well, it is quite large, quite frankly. I mean, there are several movements, particularly two. One could say that one is probably close to the PT. The other is probably more independent in the sense that is on the left, but is probably a broader spectrum of movements. There is also the student movements. It's very large. It's taking place in several cities. And in fact, the idea that is so illegitimate, this government, is picking up among many people. Of course, all the actions on the street, we never know for how long they will last, because it's a kind of activity that probably cannot be sustained for a very long time. It's always possible there will be some repression. The new Minister of Justice is someone that used to be the Secretary of State Security in São Paulo. He has said that most of these social movements are guerrilla movements, are criminal, they should be criminalized, and in fact he wants to to do that. And he has already promised that we'll do that. So we don't know. It's very uncertain. The thing is that it's more the impression that is even more illegitimate, this government, than one might expect. And the people are courageously taking stand on this in all walks of life, in all the institutions, even in the ministries. So the new ministers, for instance, sometimes are received by the staff with shouts and insults. So the situation is a bit chaotic at this point. And the ministers,
give us a sense of what the cabinet looks like.
well, it would be a comedy if it were not tragic, because all of them are male, all of them are white. Most of them, which is quite a symbolic and substantial change vis-a-vis the recent past, and many of them are being investigated for corruption charges. In fact, for the car wash operation, some of them are investigating for that. Well, and then I just give you a few examples of the case of the ministers that we have. We have seen them at this point. But it's agriculture is probably the largest soybean farmer and big landowner in Brazil at this point, and is the Minister of Agriculture. The Minister of Justice is this person that has been already shown in public that he wants to criminalize most of the social movements and the protests. The Minister of Finance is a banker. Meirelles, he was the head of the central bank. The markets, of course, trust him and are very happy with him. Of course, not the people, because we know that he will be applying the austerity measures and all the neoliberal type of adjustment that we have seen in other places. There is a novelty which is very troublesome. Is a new office, the Office of Institutional Security, which is presided over by the Chief of Staff of the Army. That is to say, is a military person in the government, which usually does not happen very often in democratic governments in our time. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs was defeated by Lula, as the person that the United States trusts a lot, and all his curriculum is in favor of privatization, liberalization, and is also investigated for irregularities in his campaign when he was government. So all these people have problems with the justice, and I don't understand what is new about this, except for the measures that will be implemented. And that is really worrisome, what is going on right now.
Professor, let's unpack one of those situations. Now, the Agriculture Ministry in Brazil is one of the largest ministries, and it is not only responsible for agriculture, but for delivering some of the social programs to rural areas. And this particular ministry, under both Lula and Dilma, had played a major role in alleviating hunger and poverty in the country. What will it mean to have somebody this conservative in such a post?
Well, it's a sign. I mean, it is really a sign of aggressiveness of this right that is coming to power. They want to show what they are going to do. Sometimes they don't trust the politicians. They want their own people. I mean, the bankers, they want the bankers. They want also the landowners and in this case, the industrial farmers. Well, basically what it means is basically that, of course, there will be more of the expulsions and dispossession of peasants. He has been responsible for lots of them in his state, which is Mato Grosso do Sul, and is probably where the agricultural frontier, has been more aggressive. That's where we have witnessed the assassination of so many indigenous leaders. So he has been also very close to this type of politics with private armies, dispossessing people and killing, assassinating indigenous leaders. So you can see that more and more violence will be in the countryside in Brazil. And of course, no land, probably the measures that in the last minute, we have to say that Dilma signed, gave him this land. There's what they call the reserves, which is the land tracts for indigenous people that have been granted according to the Constitution. will be probably nullified, and this minister will be very active on this. There will be no interest in environmental issues on the part of this minister because he has been very much responsible in his state for cutting the forests in order to expand the agriculture frontier, as they call it, which is the soybeans frontier. Therefore, nothing to be expected, and most of the other ministers have also already said they will be against the social policies. They will be against the family bonus, which, as you know, was so instrumental in getting out of poverty more than 45 million people in education. But there is a huge sign also of this new conservative. Some of these people, these ministers, are associated with evangelical churches. One of them is an ex-bishop of one of the evangelical churches. The most is a backlash at all levels, cultural, political, economic, and we have to connect this new government, which is a provisional government. I mean, the president, Dilma, is just suspended. She could theoretically come back. So this government should be very cautious in taking measures that will be radically different from the policies that were in place before she was suspended. Well, nothing of that is happening. On the contrary, a shock therapy, a shock doctrine is being applied, very much similar to the one that Macri did in Argentina. It's basically the same. I mean, they are copying each other. And I could mention to you the 4 measures that will be discussed in this week in the Senate, and they are very clear about the intent of this government.
All right, Professor de Sousa Santos, I thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to have you back very soon.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.